So let's begin with the case studies. So we have here 2023 case studies in front of us. So the first question, so just read the first question and then we will solve the questions given below. So just read it first. Alright then, having discussed the approach of the case study, now we are here with the 2023 ethics case studies. So the recently asked questions in the ethics GS paper 4. So the first question is in front of us. So first take a pause and read the question first. So here in the question, let's get through it. It is said that you are working as an executive in a nationalized bank for several years. One day, one of your close colleagues tells you that her father is suffering from heart disease. So this is the issue. Issue part has been identified in the second line, that and needs surgery immediately to survive. She also tells you that she has no insurance. Fact, and the operation will cost about 10 lakh. These are the facts. You are also aware of the fact that her husband is no more and that she is from a lower middle class family. This economic issue. So just keep writing all these these pointers in the side so that you can able to figure out what are the aspects in the case study is being given. Then moving ahead, you are also aware fact that you are empathetic about her situation. However, apart from expressing your sympathy, you do not have the resources to fund her. So your limitations. Right. A few weeks later, you ask her about the well-being of her father and she informs you about his successful surgery and that he is recovering. She then confides in you that the bank manager was kind enough to facilitate the release of 10 lakh rupees. The bank manager now has come into picture from a dormant account. Now how money came from a dormant account of someone to pay for the operation with a promise that it should be confidential and be repaid at the earliest. She has already started paying it back and will continue to do so until it is returned. So here we have gathered some of the aspects of this case study. First is that who you are, then the issue that your colleague's father is suffering from this so and so heart disease, then the economic aspect to it, that she has economic crunch of undertaking this operation. Then comes this how she has been able to get the funds through this bank manager's kind gesture, a kind gesture you can say, and from where the money has come, from this dormant account. Okay, and she is returning this money. So these are the facets of this case study. Now the first question is, what are the ethical issues involved? So just like I said, you need to begin your case study with an introduction. So here, having understood all these aspects of the case study, you can introduce this case study with any of the above, any of the mentioned methods that I have told you. Either it could be directly the facts of the case, or it could be the stakeholder approach. If I take the stakeholder approach, then on one hand, you as a manager, you as a executive, you as an executive, then your colleague, then that bank manager and the dormant account holder well, it's just a rough idea of presenting this. You can have any of the schematic representation of this, or even you can write in this 1, 2, 3, 4 likewise also. Okay, so you can begin with this approach. Okay, so having said that this is going to be your introduction, then first question is that what are the ethical issues involved? Well, coming back to this question, having read the question, you can identify some of the ethical issues. The first issue here is that the money was paid from a dormant account, and who has paid this? It was done by the bank manager. The kind gesture of the bank manager made him transfer this money from dormant account to that lady or the colleague. So this says that the first issue here is the issue of transparency. Because the bank manager was not transparent enough in doing his job. He did not mention how the money was transferred. Okay, he did not intimidate anybody, any senior of him. Nobody knows how the money was transferred. So this amounts to lack of transparency in this. The second issue is that the bank manager did not have this accountability aspect. The first thing was transparency. The second, you will have to write at least 1 to 2 lines describing how transparency is an ethical issue in this. Okay, so you can write that the bank manager was not transparent in conducting his job, that is transferring the money from the dormant account to a colleague of so and so. So second is accountability issue. Whatever the act that the bank manager has undertaken, he was not accountable for this. Nowhere in this case study it was mentioned that he had accountability while conducting his job, that is while he transferred the money, he was answerable to anybody. He was not answerable anywhere. So this accountability issue is there. Again 1 to 2 lines describing how accountability is an ethical issue in this. The third aspect here is that if you look into the case study, then it's of misuse of power. The bank manager itself had misused his power, misused his authority and transferred this money. So the third issue could be this. Misuse of power / authority. In this you can explain that how probity got compromised while doing his job. Okay, so this is the third ethical issue. The fourth, alright then, having said all the facets of how to approach a case study, the dimensions, the trends, now let's move on to the case study itself. So in front of me there is a case study from 2023. So it's a very recent one. So one by one we will be discussing all the case studies that have come so far in the UPSC examination. So the first case study is in front of us. Let's take a pause and read the case study first, and then we will discuss the questions. Alright, then let's read the case study first. You are working as an executive in a nationalized bank. So here, just while reading the case study, start marking all the facts, people, stakeholders involved, the facets of the case study. So you are working as an executive in a nationalized bank. So your position has been defined for several years. One day, one of your close colleagues tells you that her father is suffering from heart disease. So your colleague's father is suffering from heart disease. So health issue has been described here. Needs surgery immediately to survive. She also tells you that she has no insurance and the operation will cost around 10 lakh rupees. So economic issue. See how things are just following each other. First health issue, then to counter, in order to solve this health issue, she needed 10 lakh rupees and that she didn't have. So this is the economic issue. You are also aware of about her situation. However, apart from expressing your sympathy, you do not have the resources to fund her. So lack of capability, your lack of capability. It has been described over here. A few weeks later, you ask her about the well-being of her father and she informs you about his successful surgery and that he is recovering. She then confides in you that the bank manager, the next stakeholder, bank manager was kind enough to facilitate the release of 10 lakh rupees from a dormant account of someone to pay for the operation with a promise that it should be confidential and be repaid at the earliest. She has already started paying it back and will continue to do so until it is all returned. Okay, so we have seen what role we have been assigned, then what the issue is, how health issue, then economic issue, then lack of capability of helping her, then how the entry of bank manager happens and how he facilitates this financial support by transferring from a dormant account to the colleague of executive, and then she also starts repaying it. Okay, so these are the facets, these are the aspects of this case study. So the first question comes here is, what are the ethical issues involved? So having said how to start a case study, we have different methods of giving this introduction, right? The first, we will be starting with this introduction. So you can start with anything. Well, I would have preferred a stakeholder approach like this. You as an executive, then colleague, then bank manager, then account holder from whom the money was transferred. So stakeholders, these are primarily the stakeholders. Well, instead of writing in this way, you can also write it like this: 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on. Okay, so this could be the introduction part. Apart from that also, you can write the issue in just 1 or 2 points, that there was an issue of health, and then how money was transferred from dormant account so likewise you can give a brief fact or issue of this case alongside with the stakeholder approach. So this is how you can start your answer. Now next is the question. That the first question says that the issues, what are the ethical issues attached to it? So in the question itself, it was described that how the money was transferred by the bank manager from a dormant account to that lady. So this, when the bank manager actually undertook this operation, there was lack of transparency in his action, right? So there is an issue. The first issue we can say is that the issue of transparency. Well, you can write 1 to 2 lines describing how transparency has been an ethical issue in this, right? So first is that transparency. Second is that accountability. So while the bank manager was transferring the money, he was not accountable or being answerable for his task. Nowhere in the case study it was mentioned that the bank manager was accountable for his task that he did, that transferred the money from that dormant account to that lady's account. Okay, so this is the second issue. 1 to 2 line can be used to describe this also. The third issue is that the bank manager misused his position, his authority. So here probity was compromised. Right. So the bank manager, while being in power, while being in position as the custodian of the dormant account, transferred the money without giving any notice to anybody, silently to this lady's account, and this is how the bank manager has actually misused his power or authority. So this amounts to a third ethical issue that we can say has been compromised here. Next, we can say that there was lack of integrity also, as the manager was supposed to uphold integrity, that is steadfast adherence to strict moral principles in every situation. So here he actually didn't uphold this value, because when something was demanded out of his position that he must remain integral, he didn't. He transferred the money. So this value also got compromised. Next, we can say that somehow empathy or compassion was also in a compromising position, as the lady who received money, but at the same time the money that she got belonged to somebody else's. So he or she got deprived of the money that was in his account. So we can say that this fifth, empathy or compassion, has also been compromised. So having said that, around 4 to 5 issues is being compromised here. We can write some other issues also if we have time. For example, confidentiality. this value has also been compromised. Now why so? Now because the lady was supposed to keep this whole thing confidential, right? But she didn't keep it confidential, rather she disclosed the matter to his colleague. Right. So the value of confidentiality was also got compromised. So likewise, these 4 to 5 or 6 issues have been compromised here. So these broadly we are supposed to write at least 1 to 2 lines describing how each and every value got compromised in respect to this case study. Okay. So the next question is, evaluate the behavior of the bank manager from an ethical point of view. Well, this evaluation requires both the angles, the positive one and the negative one. We should not be simply describing only the one side of this ethical point, that is either a positive or a negative side. So here we can explain how both the aspects, that is positive and negative, were attached to it. Well, the first thing is positive behavior. Let's talk about first the positive behavior. So the behavior of the bank manager from a positive side is that he was benevolent and kind enough, and that's why he transferred the money. That led him transfer the money from the dormant account okay. So this was the first positive side of this, that he was being benevolent, kind enough, and that's why he transferred the money from the dormant account to that lady's account. Okay. Now the second thing is that apart from that, there is nothing to describe enough from the positive side. Just we need to have a balanced view, so that's why we had to mention this positive side also. The negative side itself says that there was misuse of power. Misuse of power, authority. Right. The act was unjust. Now this we have seen how it amounts to misuse of power, because without telling somebody or without giving a notice to any higher authority or any person, or the person to whom the money belonged, the bank manager used his power or authority to silently transfer the money from that dormant account to that lady's account. So this is how misuse of power is or authority is there. Second, the act was unjust. Why? Because the money belonged to somebody, though it was a dormant account, but it did belong to somebody. Somebody was the custodian of this money. So without telling him or her the money to which the money to whom it belonged, the manager transferred the money unilaterally. So having done this, manager deprived that person from using his or her money, right? So that's why it was an unjust act. So the first is misuse of power. The second was an act was unjust. Okay. And third, we can say that from ethical point of view, the act was misuse of authority. I would say act was unjust. It was unjust, misuse of power, and not following the set procedure, that is, transfer of money requires a certain procedure to be followed, right? Whenever there is a money that is being transferred either in a government department or anywhere else in a public sector enterprise or anywhere, even in bank, there is a set procedure for it. So that set procedure was not followed and this was silently transferred. So this amounts to not following the set procedure for transferring the money. So this was the third thing that got compromised out. From the ethical point of view, we can say that these three negatives and this is the positive. So this is how we can evaluate the behavior of the bank manager from both the sides, from the positive and from the negative side. So the last thing is, how would you react to the situation? Well, this situation demands both a long-term and a short-term understanding. Well, from requires an holistic approach. And what is that holistic approach? That is, first we need to bring transparency and accountability in the working of banking operations. Right. We need to have this transparency thing along with this accountability in the working of the banking operations. Okay. So in future, if again such sort of situation, such sort of activity is being done, and we should make sure that this is being prevented. So in order to prevent these types of things, transparency and accountability is the foremost thing that must be ensured in the working of the banking operations. Okay, so this is the first thing. Secondly, we must ensure that employees must have medical insurance. Because in this case, we have seen that since the woman did not had this medical insurance being done in the name of her father, that's why she had to run from here and there for the money. Alright, if she had this medical insurance, she did not had to run here and there for the money that was required for the treatment of his father. So this is the second thing that we must ensure, that employees must have a medical insurance. Thirdly, corpus can be allocated for such medical emergency in the department itself. Alright, so if the department itself has a such sort of mechanism where a corpus has been allocated for any kind of medical emergency, then the department itself can help the woman, right, or any of its employee. So this is the third thing that could be done as a response to it. Alright, so first we have said that there must be transparency and accountability in the operations, in the banking operations, so that there is no transfer of money, and even if such sort of activity is being done, it is being brought into the notice of the authorities or the higher ups. Secondly, we must have a medical insurance being done. We must ensure that medical insurance is being done for every employee, so that in situations he or she itself can claim that medical insurance and get the treatment done. And thirdly, a corpus can be allocated for such medical emergencies in the department itself, so that the department in its own level can help in such sort of medical emergencies. And lastly, I would say that it requires probity to be ensured. That is, the department must ensure that there is enough probity being maintained or being adhered in the department by the employees of the department itself. Alright, so these are the four things that can be written in this reaction part, which was asked in third question. So having said or attempted all the three questions, so having answered all these questions, we can conclude with this the facets of that was given in the case study, that yes, such sort of things happen, but we must ensure a secure mechanism through which the funds should not be transferred from any dormant account to anybody, and at the same time there must be mechanisms ensured for compassionate grounds for helping the employees working in the department. So likewise we can conclude with these statements, and here our first question is done.